So as much as I find it funny and really play along with being so heavily related to Shadow Dive, and many people still assuming all I do is play Shadow Dive, I've actually been maining a different build now that revolves around radar manipulation with Top Tree Nightstalker and Graviton Forfeit. I talked about this in a previous video and how I was terribly wrong about this subclass. Granted, the buff to Graviton Forfeit really made it a lot stronger in my opinion, and I've fallen in love with this build so much, even though the super is complete trash, because the neutral game allows you to mess with opponents because of the radar manipulation and play a lot more predictably, and in some cases really it just leaves them completely clueless and unexpecting of where you're going to be and how you're playing around them. So at the core of this build we have the new and improved Graviton Forfeit, and like I mentioned, we're using it with Top Tree Nightstalker. This is your main point of synergy here, and it's really not too hard to figure out. Obviously, the Graviton Forfeit now increases the duration of your invisibility, which is probably the strongest effect of it. But overall, with Graviton Forfeit, what you're essentially doing is you're sacrificing something like Stompies or another exotic that's kind of self-sufficient on its own abilities and brings another set of abilities or enhancement to your build outside of your subclass. Whereas with this exotic, you're taking something that just amplifies all the abilities currently existing on your subclass. This exotic is pretty much here to serve as a catalyst for the rest of your build, so you can always have radar manipulation. The most important aspects of it is having the longer invisibility duration, which we're going to be able to loop pretty much indefinitely with just a few seconds between each usage, and I'll talk about how we're going to do that in just a moment. But also your melee charges faster, so not only do you have your Gambler's Dodge to get your melee back, but even when you're just going invisible and just looping that invisibility, you're going to get your smoke grenade ping back very quickly and have it super frequently. Both of these things obviously work together to have two forms that can be used together or separately for radar manipulation. It's got some nice side benefits like faster reload while invisible and a pretty big boost to recovery while you're invisible, which is neat even if you go invisible after taking damage. Cool Guy did a really great breakdown of the recovery benefits, which you can check out on his channel if you like, but basically it always puts you at tier 9.5, so slightly faster than 9 recovery but not quite 10 recovery, pretty much no matter your recovery level, which is very good. I have two variants of this build personally, and I can talk about how you can build around Graviton in just a moment, but the stats I've opted in for with my first variant is 10 mobility, 2 resilience, 9 recovery, 6 discipline, 7 intellect, and 6 strength. If you want to try something a little bit riskier or different, you can make a version of the build with the War Mantis gauntlets, which are still bugged. They're blue gauntlets that give you only all your stats in the top 3 categories, which is mobility, resilience, and recovery. So with that, I actually have a build of 10 mobility, 6 resilience, 9 recovery, 5 discipline, 4 intellect, and 5 strength. Before we get into mods and weapons, let's talk about the stats I chose, why I chose them, and the ideal stats you want for this subclass and build. 10 mobility in my opinion is a must. If you are using a lightweight weapon, you can get a free +2 to mobility while you have the lightweight weapon out, so that's another way that you can bypass this and just go 8 mobility and min-max a little bit better. For me, I'm not using lightweight weapons with this build, so I'll go for 10 mobility so that we have maximum invisibility uptime. I went for 2 resilience on my first variant because this is the lowest you can go without being really hard punished by anything. Below this, you're going to get, I believe, 2 head 1 bodied by 140 RPM hand cannons, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, even 2 tapped by Ace Mori, which I'm sure translates to something from the 120 RPM hand cannons as well, so I do not suggest going below 2 resilience. I went for 9 recovery, and this might be weird because a lot of you guys are thinking, well, don't you not need recovery because you have Graviton? I think in a perfect scenario, yes, but not every scenario is going to be perfect. You're going to want to use your invisibility preemptively to go take an angle, and if you're caught, well, you're going to be out of invis and you're not going to be recovering faster. I don't like playing into low recovery all because I have this boost. I think 8 is the lowest I would go because it's still boosting it to that quote-unquote 9.5 level, and even at 9 you're still getting a little bit faster. So I think it's reasonable to say, okay, we don't need 10 with this because we're still getting a small boost that takes us very close to 10, but we definitely still want a recovery level that's going to allow us to stay alive and get back in the fight faster. So I think 8 is the absolute lowest I would go personally. I especially stand by this if you plan on playing more aggressively with this build, which I believe you should be. This gives you the opportunity to go completely off the radar and take off angles cut the map, catch people spawning or catch them off spawn, sit at cutoffs. So this is, I think, better to be playing aggressively and playing the off angles and cutoffs for your team. And if you're playing aggressively and you get caught, you need to be able to recover quickly. It's just not practical to say, I can just dodge and get my recovery back. It's just too perfect of a scenario. I don't think you want to rely on that. 6 discipline and 6 strength just seem like solid values to have my grenade and my melee up. My melee is going to be up even faster because of the invisibility and graviton, but the grenade, I use spike grenades because I think they're the best and most lethal on their own on the Nightstalker subclass, and they're actually better than expected. So this just seemed like a good cooldown for me. I'm running 7 intellect, and with my mod setup, I think I can even get it to 8 intellect. And you might be wondering, why are you running high intellect with such a bad super? But at the end of the day, it is a shutdown super, and its existence, especially in trials, which is mainly where I use this version of the build, it still applies a lot of pressure on a team when you have a super, especially when you have a potential answer for one of their supers. They know they can't just blindly push, they have to bait something else. It still creates some sort of pressure, and I think it's important still in trials, even though the super is so lackluster. On my War Mantis version of the build, I did get the same 10 mobility to loop invisibility. I got 6 resilience because this is the next level you want. If you can't get to 6, you might as well stay at 2. But if you can get to 6, it does have some value. It makes the aggressive shotguns take an additional pellet to kill, which is great for edging out and staying alive against shotgunners, especially with the slide nerfs. It also stops Thorn. It can't 2-head 1 body with burn or 2-head with burn with a perk, so it counters both of those things. And I believe it also stops, at 5 resilience at least, the 1 body kill with an Imp Rift and a high impact sniper. So 6 resilience does a lot of great stuff. I think it even does more than this, but those are the main things that stand out to me about it. I have the same 9 recovery, but like I said, you can go down to 8 if you'd like. I did take lower discipline, intellect, and strength, which isn't too bad, but that's because of the War Mantis gauntlets not giving you anything in discipline, intellect, or strength, which is fine. The discipline cooldown I went for is still 5. This gives me my spike nade every minute, which is solid. I like that for territory control and zoning people off. 4 intellect isn't a big deal because the super isn't great anyways, and often I'm not using this build so much in trials, and even if I was, I can just get one of my other teammates to run high intellect to replace my high intellect version. And then I have 5 strength, which again is just a solid value which will be boosted by Graviton forfeit. I love the War Mantis version of this build because it really allows you to go top heavy into that mobility, resilience, and strength, which I think is the most important for this build because its abilities aren't the strongest, and the strongest ability that you're getting from it, the smoke ping, is coming back anyways off of Graviton forfeit, boosting your cooldown. The biggest concerns for the War Mantis version of this build is, as much as you can masterwork the War Mantis blue gauntlets, you only get 1 mod slot other than your stat mod slot. This also means you don't get any seasonal mod slots either. The other thing is that you only can get this to 320 light highest because it is a blue, so this means with your build you'll be highest 328, which isn't terrible. I honestly took this into trials and Iron Banner and I didn't really notice much of a difference, but that's something to keep aware of. Lastly, I'll talk about my notable mods on the build. A lot of these mods are going to change based on what base stats you have and what you can do with your stats and what you have available for you, as well as the unflinching for the weapons that you want or targeting perks for the weapons that you want. The big things that I kept on my build though was things like Powerful Friends, Radiant Light, and most importantly, Utility Kickstart. Double utility kickstart on your class item on the stasis element allows you to get a quarter roughly of your ability energy back whenever you use your dodge. This combined with Graviton forfeit lets you loop your invisibility so that you only have 1 to 2 seconds of downtime without invisibility between each full invisibility duration. As for weapons, I highly recommend sniping with this build. You can shotgun of course, but I think this is better catered for sniping because you can go off radar and take crazy off angles that they aren't anticipating at all, and if you don't spend too much time in your scope, which I don't think you should be, you are harder to snipe for another sniper because they can't clearly see your head. This forces an enemy sniper to take an extra moment to line up their shot and go for it, which might buy you the time to shoot faster and outshoot them. If you are shotgunning and are interested in radar manipulation, I think there's a better build for that achieves something similar for shotguns, which I'll be posting very soon, utilizing Gemini Jesters. Lastly, utilizing a kill clip weapon isn't a bad idea. I use Shayura's Wrath with tunnel vision and kill clip, and it has an obscenely low reload speed. But even without a reload mod, I get such a fast reload with this because of Graviton forfeit that it's not even noticeable, and I can always take advantage of those kill perks. So that's the invisibility build I've been running and seeing the most competitive success with. I've been in love with it, so hope you guys like it. Go forth and enjoy breaking free from the radar. It's hilarious. Take care.